So we've had an opportunity to hear Freeman speak about education in Montgomery County, in the state of Maryland, and in the U.S. And one of the things that the points he made about how we take this from here, I'd like to ask our panel, our awardees, our honorees, one question. From your vantage point, how do we work together across sectors to put it all together for these kids and make sure they have a path to prosperity? Let's start with Josh.
Do I get to stand for
Yes,
this?
sir. Absolutely.
Support the Montgomery County Public Schools. No, if I'm given 2 minutes, I'm going to use it. I am a superintendent. So first, I, of course, want to thank College Tracks, the board, and Nancy for this honor. When I got here, Nancy was one of the first people at my door to make sure that I knew about, you know Nancy, right? To make sure that I knew about what College Tracks was, and she even made sure that her husband, Jeff, followed me at the gym every morning to keep, I do see him every morning. So thank you for you know, the honor, and you guys do fabulous work. Let me very quickly just introduce a couple people. We already introduced board members. We have members of our Board of Education, Phil Kaufman, Chris Barkley, Pat O'Neill, Shirley Brandman. I know Rebecca was coming as well. There are a couple people in the audience as well who do the work. Chris Guerin, who is our Associate Superintendent for High Schools, and Kevin Lowndes, who is our Director of School Support and Improvement. Ursula Herman is also here, and I want to recognize Frank Stetson as well, who was critically important in providing support during his time here, so thank you, Frank. So, if I can answer the question quickly, because I know my time is up. Hope travels, right? Hope travels is a term or a statement that our most hopeful teacher in America, Mary Hawkins Jones, it's a term she used when she accepted the award from Gallup for being the most hopeful teacher in America. She's a teacher at Westover Elementary. And what College Tracks does, and what we're trying to do in Montgomery County Public Schools with our emphasis on social and emotional well-being, with the partnerships that we have with University of Shady Grove and with Montgomery College and the ACES program, which Freeman was talking about and which you guys have, is the idea that hope travels. And the idea that all of us as a community have to recognize that by reaching out to young people, by helping them not only access college, which you do, but help them succeed in college, which is in fact the next level of work for us, because so many of our kids go to college, but not enough actually end up graduating. Right? The numbers are actually much starker than we think. We get them there, but after 6 years, only about 30% of our kids of color actually have a BA, right? And in order for us to get to the next level, we have to recognize that through our individual actions as community members, it doesn't have to be through a fancy institution or an entrenched institution or any kind of institution. It can simply be by reaching out to others. We can instill hope in young people so they get the guidance that they need to be successful in college and in life. We're trying to do that in Montgomery County with the great partnerships we have. The partnerships with College Tracks is one that is certainly a beacon for us all. But I want people to understand that if we think about the incredible value that every single one of our young people bring to the table, we can inspire hope in them, and they will come back and they will continue to, as Bertha said, pay it forward. So thank you.
I just have to share one thing. This morning I had the opportunity to have Josh gave a presentation up at the University of Shady Grove, and they gave him 7 minutes, and his comment was the superintendent can't clear his throat in 7 minutes, which I thought was hysterical. Valerie, I'd love to have your comments.
Am I supposed to stand up too?
If you'd like to, you can sit. It's your choice.
Oh, sure. I first want to thank Oscar for sharing his story with us, because like Oscar, I had many angels in my life. I actually was the first person in my family to go to college. And my story is so much like many of the stories that I'm sure you hear in College Tracks every day. And I think it's really important, someone like myself, who was the first person in my family to go to college, but I didn't finish because I got pregnant and had a baby, and that baby is now 31 years old, and I spent my whole adult life making sure that both my sons got a college education. that was my job. And actually, the way I even got involved in politics started because I was a mom raising my 2 children, and I was very determined that what I saw going on in the school system was not going to happen to my boys. And so I became very aggressive about making sure that children that looked like mine had opportunities. And so all those many years later, I'm on the county council. I chair the education committee. Half of Montgomery County's operating dollars go through my committee. And I am very, very pleased that there's a partnership that I have with MCPS, and one of my colleagues here, Councilmember Navarro, and I served on the Board of Education together. What I think is really important about College Tracks is that you all have these incredible stories to share with all of us in the community who really don't understand the struggles that many families have trying to help their children navigate, first of all, the public school system, and then what do you do to help navigate your way into college. And so when I said I spent the majority of my day making sure my kids got those applications filled out, I was sitting right there next to them, took them to all of their, to the colleges that they wanted to visit, and so they both got college educations. And I want to say to Dr. Pollard, who was not here at Montgomery College at the time, my 26-year-old son graduated from the University of Maryland 3 years ago with a degree in environmental science, and now he's working in a great company and is doing work as an arborist, saving trees and planting trees all across the region. So I'm very proud of my boys. I have a story that's not different from so many women, and as a woman of color, I was so happy to be able to raise my 2 sons here. They both graduated from Blair High School. Yay, Blair. And let me just put a plug in for Silver Spring. Thank you for having your event in downtown Silver Spring. This is the area that I represent. So I'll thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you, Valerie. Ned, please.
So I'm a little different than most of the esteemed folks up here. I'm not really an administrator. I don't normally talk to adults like you, so people make me. It's a little awkward, to be honest. I spend my time torturing teenagers. I help people do better on standardized tests. I help people learn better. I help people ideally reframe how they think about themselves as learners and the process of education. And 2 things sort of occurred to me. One, I met this morning with a brand new student new to me. She's not a new student, she's new to me as a student. And she was a pro bono student from a local school, and the college counselor asked me if I could work with her. And I never know quite what I'm getting into, and I stepped in, and it was interesting because she doesn't look anything like me. She had an accent that was very different from mine. She has socioeconomic background that's remarkably different from most of the people with whom I work. But she was stunning. I mean, just inquisitive and sharp and interesting and interested. And I guess I'm the biggest dope in the world, but I constantly have to remind myself of just how widely dispersed is ability. And it doesn't exist just in families and communities that look like the ones that we live in. It's all over the place. And my job as a tutor is to really try to close the gap that I see existing between people's potential and their performance, as does everyone who's in education. And part of the work that I also get to do, and I have a real advantage because I work one-on-one with kids, so I get to sort of pull off their skull cap and talk about all the things that really scare them. And one of the things that I really enjoy doing is I have the opportunity to change people's beliefs. I had a student years ago, one of my favorite kids. She was not as academic as her older sister. She was not as academic as her peers. And we're going through this stuff, and her self-concept about this stuff was a little low. And every time she got a question right, there was a little bit of a stretch for her. I'd sort of whisper and say, "That was kind of geeky," and just sort of walk away. And she'd be like, "No one ever called me a geek before." And it kept going and going and going. And of course, all the way back to Lao Tzu, we are what we think, right? And change the power of belief and just sort of bit by bit over time. And so she went to Bucknell, had a lovely time there. And she was the one kid in many years of doing this stuff who came back and visited me every single break, Christmas break and Thanksgiving and everything. She came back and she sent me this beautiful, beautiful note. And she said, "Thank you, blah, 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 for all the stuff, helping me get into college, yada, yada." But at the bottom, she said, "Thank you for making me a geek." And it's interesting because what education can do at its best for all of us, for administrators and for teachers, for anyone who really, for parents, for anyone who really cares about kids, you don't need a fancy title, you don't have to be an overpriced anything, but if you spend time with that kid one-on-one and you can change just a bit that power of belief, then the trajectory that they chart for themselves is so remarkably different. And so that's what College Tracks does, one-on-one, working with all these remarkable kids because ability is so much more widely dispersed than is opportunity, right? And they not only give people a pathway and say, this is going to work because it's worked for other people. And they say, really? And said, absolutely. And with that power of belief, they chart their own course.
Thank you, Ned. Ned's one of our board members, and obviously we're very proud to have him as an honoree as well. You know, one of the things that he does is train our volunteers, and we couldn't do this without our volunteers. So please, one more round for our volunteers. Good, Dr. Pollard.
So I'll follow suit and stand up, although my feet are hurting, but I'll still stand up. I want to first of all say congratulations and thank you to Nancy and College Tracks for what you're doing. This is powerful work in the community, and I salute you. 10 years of doing this, I think we deserve to give you all an applause for that. So I had some prepared comments. My staff did a great job. They said, what do you want to say? And then they wrote it all down. They made it sound good. They put it in a notebook, and they sent me off with it. And then about 4:30 this afternoon, I didn't want to say that anymore. I wanted to say something else because there was a series of conversations that occurred today that made me think differently. So I literally sat down at a computer and did something I haven't done in a while myself, and I actually wrote. So I'm writing, I wrote this, and I'm gonna read portions of this to you because I think it speaks to some things. So the prepared comments, they had some great things in here talking about the partnerships we have in Montgomery College, array of programs and partnerships from public and private industry that we work with who are doing powerful work in our community, local and global businesses supporting the economic vitality of our community, and certainly the local, state, and national government that does so much to support Montgomery College and the partnerships we have in making what we might call advancing the public good. All of that being said, I was struck by the prompt that we were given as a panel here and a conversation that happened today at an earlier meeting at the Board of Advisors for the University of Shady Grove. And the board chairman here, Mr. Beverly, raised a question. And he said this question, he said, how do we advance the notion of the rising tide raises all boats in a community that may very well mean that some of the resources have to be shifted to ensure that that occurs? So I had that prompt here about prosperity, working across sectors, rising boats. So I want to offer a condensed answer to both of those questions. We must change the trajectory of our collective narrative. We must change the narrative completely around these issues. How can we not work together to ensure that Miles, Myra, Mateo, Minjay, Mohammed, and Melissa all have access to higher education and equitable paths toward that, even if they start off differently? How can we not work together to ensure that our parents and our communities thrive? Because we all know that if one of us thrives, we should all be able to thrive. And if one of us is not thriving, indeed, our community is not thriving. So perhaps the first effort is to recognize and own the fact that we're in this together. That's how we get on the pathway. Putting students on paths to prosperity means that we have to put aside our grievances that we have. We have to speak truth about the community reality as it is today, not as it was 10 years ago, 50 years ago. We got to own that. We have to allay our concerns about who shines and who doesn't shine. We have to get out of each other's way sometimes. We have to challenge ourselves to be uncomfortable from time to time, and we have to refrain from otherizing each other at our students' expenses. False dichotomies and contrived competition does very little to ending a trajectory that's happening for many people in our community. And we have to ensure that all of us thrive in order for all of us to benefit. So call me a little crazy. I know I kind of went off on a little tangent there, but I was writing and I was on a roll. But I believe that we have all the makings to do this if we want to shift the reality that we see right now. One where all students, regardless of their race, their background, their ethnicity, their religion, their ability, their gender, their location, their economic status, have the right to succeed. And if we can't do it here in Montgomery County, I feel fairly certain that we can't do it any place else in this country. So if we want to do it, we want all students to prosper, it means we got to get over ourselves. That's the south side of Chicago just came out right there. Get over ourselves and figure out how we do this a little bit differently. I was struck when Freeman said, and he used this, and I was to end my quote here, Dr. King in his letter from a Birmingham jail, he says that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one of us directly affects all of us indirectly. All of us in Montgomery County are on a path of a single destiny. The quality of life for those with whom we interact, teach, and motivate can be only measured when we look at the quality of life for the entire community in which we live, work, and play. So I pledge to you right now, in this space and place, that Montgomery College embraces this moment and the opportunity, and we stand ready. And as someone, like many of the young people here, who's the first in my family to go to college, I can tell you for a fact that it changes your life. My grandfather was the male version of the HELP in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, died at 98, having seen his son complete his high school diploma and see his granddaughters become executives with advanced degrees, and then to see his great-grandson now who tells everybody, what's he gonna be? An engineer, an artist, and a ninja.
Thank you, Darian. Darren, would you share your thoughts with us?
Thank you so much. I have to say, as I'm listening, I'm humbled and honored to be sitting with a group of such incredible community leaders and educators and ridiculously good speakers that I promise I'll be very brief. On behalf of GE Capital, we couldn't be more thrilled with our association with College Tracks. We're here because we're very fortunate to work for a company that values community service and giving back and being involved in your community. And for years, we tried to find ways to do just that. And it ended up being, and more often than not, just events. And there were good events, and there were things we came together for a day, and people felt good about perhaps working for a food drive or doing something that was kind of a one-off. But we really wanted to do more. And it was Sally Rudney, the great connector, and the Community Foundation that put us in touch with Nancy, and we were hooked. I mean, College Tracks was an opportunity for us not only to get involved directly. We're a small business, about 85 people here in Bethesda, but we found a way to get together, and it started small, but then over time, as you mentioned, I think over 30 of our associates get together with students. They work on things like planning, going through what a syllabus is, figuring out how you spend your time in college, finances, whatever it takes. And we realized over time, although we were there to help the students, this was more than mutually beneficial. This was stuff that our team was coming back to the office having gotten more out of this than you can ever imagine. And so we're looking for ways to try to deepen that relationship and to continue it. So sure, there's over time that we've been able to help out a little bit financially, but what we want to be able to do is spend more time with the students, stay involved. And one thing we're working on, and something I mentioned to Kevin last night, is creating 2 internships where we'll take current College Track students, have them become part of our business so they can learn what it's like to be in business, that we're not all that different from they are, maybe just a little bit older, and they can see what it's like on our side of the fence. So thank you very much. We really appreciate the association.
Darren, thank you for your partnership. Appreciate it. Dr. Edelstein.
Well, You heard a little bit about the board meeting this morning. Our board is an incredible group of people, which includes many of the people on the stage. Valerie, Josh, Darian, Kevin. And we were talking about the issue of who gets served, who doesn't get served, who's underserved. And I think the power of this community is that we can come together and we can work together to make a difference in those issues. And that's why I want to congratulate College Tracks for leading the way. The thousands of students that you have worked with, nurtured, supported, and helped receive college degrees. Congratulations on the 10 years of service. The University of Shady Grove, I'm in a really wonderful place. I have an institution which is about 4,000 students. About 60% of the students who are undergraduate students are first generation. They're the first in their families to go to college. About 75% of those students are coming to us from Montgomery College. If we weren't here in the community, we know that many of those students would not be able to get their college degrees. So access is really an incredibly important issue. And in fact, we're working very closely with the school system and Montgomery College to increase that access, but not just the access, but the ability to complete a degree, to be college ready, to be ready for the workforce, to be ready for a job. And in that regard, I want to talk about how we work. So we are a partnership campus. We're a partnership of 9 universities, 9 public universities that come together to bring their degrees into Montgomery County so students don't have to leave the county to get their degrees. So we work as a partnership. We also are collaborators. We're collaborators with the school system, with the community college. And most importantly, we're the collaborators with the business community. So our board is primarily composed of business members who care about the future of the workforce, that care about the future of the economy in Montgomery County, care about the fact that people are going to be undereducated and not able to take advantage of the jobs that are in Montgomery County today and will be in Montgomery County in the next 10 to 20 years. So these folks are engaged. These folks serve as mentors. These folks provide internships, as you talked about earlier. And I think what makes me particularly proud is to be in a county which cares about all of its residents, cares about all of the people in the county to provide opportunity for those folks to engage in the quality of life of the county. I don't think that the problems that we're talking about are easily solved. I think they're very complicated problems, and I think they involve and require us to be very, very serious about what are the causes of those issues and what is our responsibility as a community to help to resolve them. I know that our board is very concerned and very eager to make those issues much more public. I think today is one way in which we're doing that. College Track does that for the work that they do. I am also, however, very optimistic that if there is a community in this country that can make a difference, that can provide opportunities for all of their residents, it's Montgomery County. I'm very pleased to be a part of it. Thank you.
Now for our other elected official who spent time on the Board of Education as well and now is our council president, Ms. Navarro.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to share that one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be here tonight celebrating with you this anniversary is because one of my sort of criteria for being excited about a program is how they articulate their mission and how they go about implementing their services. And I have for a long time talked about something that really usually bothers me, and it's this notion that when we refer to our students of color usually, it follows with so we have a challenge, or so we need more resources, or so it's kind of a problem. And in reality, what I'm always looking for is to hear how instead we can refer to our amazing students of color as assets, because that's what they actually are. And if we want students to be hopeful about their future, they have to know that when they walk into a classroom or into a room or into a public hearing on budget, et cetera, that they are seen as assets. Because at the end of the day, again, that's who they are. So when I hear statistics about how in 2050, our workforce would be about 80% of our workforce would be comprised of people who are descendants of immigrants or people of color, I'm reminded of the notion that when we talk about the academic achievement gap, it's not just a moral issue or a civil rights issue, it's also a socioeconomic issue. And so if we begin to change that narrative, and it's amazing to hear so many leaders here talk about the same thing, which means the stars are aligning, if we can change that narrative, and if we can for once and for all realize that these extraordinary students are assets because they are the future workforce, they will be the ones paying into a Social Security fund, they will be the ones leading this extraordinary country into its future and making it stronger, then I think once we do that, then the paradigm shifts, and then our policies, our budgetary decisions, everything follows. And I feel like in Montgomery County, we are very much almost there at that moment in time when that paradigm is shifting. And it is very true that we are the ones that can lead that conversation in the country. I have the honor to serve as the commissioner on one of the President Obama's, the Commission on Educational Excellence for Latinos, and I travel the country, and I'm always amazed at how much we are already. So much, so advanced in all the things that we do. And programs like these, where you had two parents from BCC who understood that unless all the students, all of them had an opportunity, then we would not be able to be proud parents in such a school. And I have a daughter at BCC, so I know it's a great school today also. But the fact that you had these parents come together and look what's happened, and the fact that you treat these students as what they are, extraordinary potential and assets, is just a very amazing example of who we are here in Montgomery County. So congratulations. I felt a little odd being here and being honored because I feel like I'm just really doing my job. It's an honor to be at the council and have the privilege of making these decisions. And it's an honor for me also, and I'm very privileged to have Berta Flores as one of my right-hand people because she is an example, and I think people like her are the ones that deserve to be up here being recognized because they have moved forward and they have achieved extraordinary things. So thank you so much for this evening.
Thank you. I wanted to say one thing about what you just said when you talked about changing the dialogue and changing how we speak about our kids. And it really is important. We always talk about kids at risk. We really are thinking about kids at promise. And that's what really we're trying to make sure you all understand. These kids aren't at risk. They are at promise. This is what we're hoping that you'll help us make sure of.